Samantha sat nervously in her seat, looking out of the small window of the spaceship as it made its descent toward a distant planet. The stars outside were distant and cold, just like the strange world she was about to enter. She had been promised a new life, one far away from the troubles and heartaches of Earth. But as the reality of her situation set in, she could not shake the feeling of unease. She had been chosen, or rather, selected, from a list of women who had volunteered to be mail-order brides for wealthy aliens across the galaxy. The thought of marrying someone she had never met, much less someone from another planet, had seemed like a distant fantasy when she first heard of the program. Now, it was her reality. The spaceship, which had felt like a luxury at first, now seemed far too small for the long journey ahead. The seats were soft, but Samantha couldn't relax. She had read all the pamphlets given to her during her training, and she knew that this marriage was about more than just companionship. It was about creating alliances, blending cultures, and strengthening the ties between Earth and alien worlds. But Samantha couldn't help but feel that she was nothing more than a pawn in this political game. She was meant to marry Threx, an aristocrat from a planet called Valoria. His homeworld was known for its advanced technology and rich history. Threx himself was a high-ranking member of the Valorian royal family, and he was chosen specifically for her. Yet, she knew nothing about him except what she had been told in brief communications from the program organizers. Threx had never reached out to her directly. She had no idea what he looked like, what his interests were, or even how old he was. All she knew was that he was important. The spaceship finally broke through the atmosphere, and Samantha's heart skipped a beat. As they descended toward the landing zone, she saw Valoria's capital city sprawling beneath her, bathed in the light of two setting suns. The planet was beautiful, with towering crystal structures that sparkled against the reddish sky. It looked like a place straight out of a science fiction novel. As the spaceship landed, a door opened and a ramp extended to the surface. A team of Valorian officials stood waiting to greet her. They were tall, with long limbs and shimmering skin that looked almost metallic in the sunlight. They moved gracefully, like creatures from another world. Samantha felt small and insignificant in comparison. The ship's captain led her down the ramp, her heart racing as she stepped into the unknown. There was no going back now. Threx was not present at the landing, which only added to the weight of the situation. Samantha had been told that he was busy with royal matters, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't care enough to be there to meet her in person. She was handed over to a team of caretakers who would take her to her new home. It felt like an elaborate dream, one that she hadn't asked for but couldn't escape. The Valorians greeted her with polite smiles, but their eyes were cold, distant. They didn't speak much to her, only offering her small instructions in their elegant language. Samantha tried to respond, but the words felt heavy in her mouth. She wasn't sure if she was speaking their language correctly. She was just a human, a stranger in this alien world, and she could sense that no matter how hard she tried, she would never fully belong. She was led through a vast palace, with long corridors that stretched as far as the eye could see. The walls were adorned with paintings of ancient battles and royal ceremonies, depicting Valorians in their finest attire. The palace seemed as cold as the people who lived inside it. There was a sense of formality and order, but no warmth, no sign of the love or joy that Samantha had always hoped for in a relationship. Eventually, she was shown to a large room, her new living quarters. The room was furnished with plush, expensive-looking furniture with a large bed draped in silken sheets. There were flowers in vases, their petals delicate and vibrant. Yet despite the beauty of the room, it felt empty. The walls seemed to close in on her as she stood in the center of the room, her heart heavy with loneliness. This was supposed to be her new home, but it didn't feel like home at all. The caretakers offered her food, which she reluctantly accepted. though her appetite was non-existent. She had been told that Threx would join her later, but it was clear that he had no intention of making this transition easy for her. She was just another piece in his world, something to be checked off and then forgotten. As the day wore on, Samantha found herself growing more and more anxious. She kept looking at the small box that had been given to her when she first arrived at the ship. It was a plain wooden box, simple in design but somehow intriguing. The box had been handed to her by the human intermediary before the journey, with strict instructions to open it only once she arrived on Valoria. There was something comforting about the box, as if it held a connection to the life she had left behind on Earth. She had been told nothing about its contents, but it felt important. Samantha sat down on the bed and opened the box, her hands trembling slightly as she lifted the lid. Inside, she found a series of strange objects, small, metallic devices that looked like nothing she had ever seen before. One was a sleek silver tablet with glowing lines running through it. Another was a strange communication device, shaped like a small orb. The final item was a delicate piece of technology that looked like a necklace, its centerpiece a shimmering crystal. As she examined the items, Samantha felt a strange sense of connection to them. They didn't seem like ordinary gifts. They were advanced, almost futuristic. It was as though they had been designed for a purpose she couldn't yet understand. But whatever that purpose was, Samantha had a feeling it would play a significant role in her life here on Valoria. But for now, the mystery of the box was all she had. The rest of the evening passed in silence. No one came to check on her, and no messages arrived from Threx. She lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, and wondering what the future held for her. Was this the life she had imagined when she agreed to become a mail-order bride? Was this all she was worth to Threx? A political arrangement? A commodity? The thought filled her with frustration and sadness. She had been promised a future of adventure and hope, but all she felt now was fear and uncertainty. But deep down, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something would change. She didn't know how or when, but she felt that the mystery of the box and the strange connection to this alien world was about to reveal something far more important than she could ever have imagined. Samantha had spent the night tossing and turning, unable to shake the feeling that something was missing. She had tried to sleep in her new room, but the soft bed and the silence of the palace only made her more restless. It was as if the world around her was too still, too distant. The beautiful yet empty space seemed to echo her loneliness. The box. That was the only thing that had given her any comfort since she arrived. She had opened it the night before, her hands trembling with a mixture of curiosity and hope. Inside, she had found 3 strange items: a silver tablet, a glowing orb-like communication device, and a crystal necklace. But what did they mean? Why had the intermediary given them to her? Samantha couldn't stop thinking about it. She had barely slept, her mind racing with questions. She decided that today would be the day she would figure out what these items were for. The caretaker who had shown her to her room had left early, and Samantha was left alone again. She could feel the weight of her situation, so far from home, so far from anyone who cared about her. But she had always been independent. If this was going to be her life now, she would find a way to make it work. She picked up the silver tablet first. The device felt smooth under her fingers, almost alive in her grasp. It had no visible buttons or controls, just soft, glowing lines that ran across its surface. She hesitated, wondering if she should try to turn it on. There were no instructions, no signs of how to operate it. Still, she couldn't ignore the pull to understand it. With a quiet breath, she placed her hand on the tablet. The moment her fingers touched the glowing surface, the lines of light began to shift and move, as though responding to her touch. A screen flickered to life, displaying a set of strange symbols that she couldn't recognize. She tried pressing. A few areas of the screen, but nothing changed. It was like a puzzle that needed to be unlocked. Frustrated but determined, Samantha began to think. What if the tablet responded to her thoughts or her intentions, rather than her physical touch? She had read a little about Valorian technology and knew that their devices were often thought-driven. This could be something similar. She focused, thinking about Earth, her family, and how desperately she wished to understand this world. She imagined herself learning the language of the Valorians, connecting with their culture. As she thought of these things, the tablet's screen shifted again. The symbols began to change into familiar letters, though written in a script she had never seen before. It wasn't quite English, but it was close. She could recognize some of the words, and slowly, the device began to display a translation in her native language. Welcome, Samantha. The key to your new life lies in the understanding of this device. It will help you navigate this world, but only if you are ready to embrace what comes next. The words sent a chill down her spine. The tablet, it seemed, had recognized her, and it had somehow known her name. How was this possible? Who had programmed it? And what did it mean by embrace what comes next? Samantha felt a mix of fear and excitement. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She wasn't just a stranger in a foreign land anymore. She had a tool, something that might help her make sense of her new life. But before she could dwell on it too much, she heard a knock at the door. Startled, she quickly tucked the tablet back into the box and turned to face the door. The sound of footsteps echoed outside her room, and moments later, the door opened. It was a Valorian woman, one of the caretakers who had brought her food the day before. "Good morning, Samantha," the woman said in soft, melodic tones. "I hope you rested well. Threx has asked to see you. He will be meeting with you shortly. Please prepare yourself." Samantha's heart skipped a beat. Threx. She had been expecting him, but she wasn't sure what to expect. The thought of meeting her husband for the first time, after so many days of being alone, sent a flurry of nerves through her. She had no idea how to behave or what to say. What kind of man was he? Would he be as cold and distant as the rest of the Valorians she had met so far? She nodded at the caretaker, trying to mask the nervousness she felt. "I'll be ready," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos inside her mind. The woman smiled, then left the room, leaving Samantha alone again. She looked at the mysterious box once more. Whatever it was that the tablet had begun to show, she knew it was important. But now she had to meet Threx. She tucked the box back into a drawer, deciding to deal with it later. For now, she would focus on the task at hand, her first meeting with the man who had been chosen for her. Samantha quickly changed into the clothes the caretakers had given her the day before, a long, elegant gown made from a soft fabric she had never seen before. It shimmered as she moved, catching the light in strange ways. The gown made her feel like someone else, someone more important than she felt inside. It was beautiful, but it felt foreign, much like everything else in this strange world. As she prepared herself, she found herself wondering again about Threx. What would he be like? Was he going to be kind? Or was he just another member of the aristocracy who would see her as nothing more than a tool for his own purposes? Her thoughts were interrupted by another knock at the door. "Lady Samantha, Threx is awaiting you in the royal chambers," a voice called from outside. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to remain calm. This was her life now. She had no choice but to face it. With a final glance in the mirror, she opened the door and followed the attendant down the long hallways of the palace. The Valorian palace was even more magnificent up close. The walls shimmered with strange, crystal-like patterns, and the floor was made of smooth stone that seemed to glow faintly. Samantha tried not to look too out of place as she walked alongside the caretaker, but the grandeur of the place made her feel incredibly small. Finally, they reached a large door guarded by two tall Valorian soldiers. The attendant knocked, and after a moment, the door opened. She gestured for Samantha to enter. Inside, the room was even more lavish than the rest of the palace. The furniture was made from rich, polished wood and covered in fine fabrics. The walls were decorated with tapestries that depicted Valorian history, and in the center of the room stood a long table where Threx was sitting. He looked up as she entered. Samantha's breath caught in her throat. He was even more imposing than she had imagined. Threx was tall, with broad shoulders and an air of quiet authority. His skin shimmered faintly, a deep shade of violet that seemed to change depending on the light. His eyes were a striking silver, and they seemed to look right through her as he studied her. He wasn't exactly smiling, but there was something almost curious about the way he observed her. "Welcome, Samantha," Threx said, his voice deep and calm. "I hope your journey was not too difficult." Samantha nodded, though her throat was dry. "It was fine. Thank you for asking." He motioned for her to sit, and she did so, feeling a wave of unease wash over her. The table between them felt like an obstacle, one that she couldn't cross. She wasn't sure what to say, but Threx broke the silence before she could. "I know this is all overwhelming for you," he said, his tone surprisingly gentle. "You were chosen to be here because you are more than just a bride. You are a part of something much larger." Samantha frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Threx leaned forward, his eyes intense. "You are here to help us, Samantha. Your knowledge of Earth, your understanding of human culture, it is valuable to us. There is much we can learn from each other if we work together." Samantha's mind raced. She had heard of the political alliances that this marriage was supposed to cement, but she hadn't realized how serious it was. She wasn't just a bride. She was a key player in something much bigger. But could she trust him? Could she trust any of them? "I'm here to help," she said slowly, trying to keep her voice steady. "But how do I do that?" Threx's lips curved into a slight smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "We will find that out together." The following days passed in a blur of meetings, strange customs, and unexpected encounters. Samantha had quickly realized that life on Valoria was nothing like the life she had known on Earth. The palace, with its grand halls and towering windows, felt like a gilded cage. She was surrounded by beauty and luxury, but it was cold, impersonal, and disconnected from the warmth she had always taken for granted. At first, her meetings with Threx were short, formal, and businesslike. He had made it clear that he valued her input, but his emotions remained locked away behind the walls of his high-ranking status. He seemed polite, even kind at times, but there was always a distance between them, a distance that Samantha couldn't quite cross. She had hoped that being together in a new world would bring them closer, but instead it felt like they were still two strangers, forced together by circumstance rather than choice. Samantha spent much of her time trying to learn more about Valoria, its people, and its customs. The palace staff was kind enough to give her lessons in the Valorian language, though the words felt strange in her mouth, and she struggled to catch up. The technology around her was advanced beyond anything she could have imagined, and she had learned that the items in the mysterious box, the tablet, the orb, and the crystal necklace, were part of a set of tools that would help her understand and navigate Valorian society. However, there was still so much she didn't understand. One evening, after yet another formal meeting with Threx, Samantha found herself walking alone through the vast corridors of the palace. She had just finished discussing the alliance between humans and Valorians, a topic that had dominated every conversation she had with Threx. She had shared her thoughts and observations, but he had always nodded politely, never giving much away. There was no personal connection, just cold diplomacy. Her mind was heavy with questions as she wandered deeper into the palace. The beauty of the place seemed to mock her, reminding her that she was a stranger in a land that would never truly feel like home. She passed through gardens of flowers she couldn't name, their petals shimmering with an otherworldly glow, and halls lined with ancient statues that seemed to watch her every move. The silence around her was overwhelming, and she couldn't help but feel isolated, trapped within the walls of this magnificent empty palace. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence. "Samantha!" She turned quickly to see Threx standing at the end of the hallway. He had come from one of the royal chambers, his figure tall and imposing even from a distance. His silver eyes met hers, and for the first time since arriving on Valoria, she saw something different in them, a flicker of something beyond the calm, controlled exterior he usually wore. "You're not in your chambers," he said, his tone gentle but serious. "What are you doing here?" Samantha hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to answer. She wasn't sure what she was doing there herself. She had simply been trying to clear her mind to escape the weight of her duties and the expectations placed on her. But now, with Threx standing before her, she felt the weight of her situation again, the political alliance, the marriage, the alien world she was trapped in. "I was just walking," she said, her voice quiet. "I needed some space." Threx nodded thoughtfully, and for a moment neither of them spoke. There was a tension between them, but it wasn't the cold distance that had existed before. This felt different, more personal, more real. "You are not the only one who feels the weight of this arrangement," Threx said finally, his voice low. "I know this is difficult for you, Samantha. It is not easy to be thrust into a new world, especially when you are expected to be a part of something larger than yourself." Samantha looked at him, surprised by his words. She had expected him to be cold, to hide behind his status and his role as a political figure. But here, in this quiet moment, he seemed almost human. She could see the strain in his face, the exhaustion in his eyes. "I didn't ask for this either," she said, her voice soft. "I didn't ask to be part of this arrangement. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I don't know how to fit in." Threx's expression softened, and he took a step closer to her. "You are already a part of this, Samantha. Whether you choose to accept it or not, you have a role to play here, just as I do. We must work together to make this alliance a success. But it doesn't have to be all politics and duty. We can learn from each other, if we are willing to try." His words made Samantha pause. She had never considered the possibility that she and Threx could work together as equals. Up until now, she had seen him as the distant aristocrat, someone far above her in status and power. But the way he spoke, the sincerity in his voice, it made her wonder if there was more to him than she had realized. "You really think we can work together?" she asked, her voice unsure. "I know we can," Threx replied, his voice steady. "We have more in common than you think. We both come from different worlds, but we both want the same thing: peace, understanding, and a future where both our people can thrive." Samantha felt a flicker of hope in her chest. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make her believe that maybe, just maybe, this strange life on Valoria wasn't as hopeless as it seemed. Threx gave her a small smile, the first one she had seen from him. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "Come," he said, motioning toward a nearby door. "I have something I would like to show you." Samantha followed him, intrigued but cautious. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she was willing to take the chance. After all, this was the first time Threx had extended an invitation to share something beyond formal duties. She followed him through the halls, the soft sound of their footsteps echoing around them. They arrived at a smaller, more private chamber, one that seemed to have a quieter, more personal atmosphere than the rest of the palace. The walls were lined with bookshelves, filled with ancient texts that looked old but well cared for. At the center of the room was a large table, covered with various maps and blueprints. The air felt different here, less formal, more relaxed. Threx turned to her and gestured to the table. "This is where we plan," he said. "This is where we work to build the future for both our people. It's not just about politics, it's about collaboration, understanding each other's cultures, and finding ways to help each other." Samantha looked at the table, where maps of Earth and Valoria were spread out. She could see the effort Threx had put into understanding her world, just as he expected her to understand his. There was something reassuring about that, something that made her believe they could work together after all. "You want me to help?" she asked, her voice uncertain but hopeful. Threx nodded. "I do. I know that you have knowledge and skills that can be valuable to both our people. But more importantly, I think you have the potential to be more than just a political figurehead. I believe you can help bridge the gap between us, Samantha. Together, we can build something that neither of us could achieve alone." Samantha looked at the map in front of her, feeling the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. But for the first time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like an opportunity to make a real difference, to create something that could change the future. "I'm willing to try," she said, her voice steady. Threx smiled again, this time with a hint of warmth. "That's all I ask." Days turned into weeks, and slowly, things began to change. Samantha's life on Valoria was no longer a series of formal meetings and endless lessons about the alien culture. Now, there was purpose, a sense of belonging that she hadn't felt before. Her partnership with Threx, once distant and cold, had evolved into something more genuine, a true alliance. She spent her days learning the intricacies of Valorian society, but more importantly, she was beginning to teach Threx about Earth. Not just about its technology and resources, but about the heart of humanity, its emotions, its ability to overcome adversity, and its deep desire for connection. Threx in turn shared more about Valorian history, their ways of governing, and their struggles for peace among the different factions on their planet. They were both learning, both growing together. The palace, once a cold and imposing structure, began to feel more like a home. Samantha's room had been filled with books about Valorian culture, but now it also contained small items from Earth, a photograph of her family, a gift she had received from a friend, and a small plant she had started to grow by her window. She had also begun using the mysterious items from the box, the silver tablet, the orb-like device, and the crystal necklace, to assist in her learning. The tablet had become her primary tool for communication with Threx, allowing them to easily translate between their languages. The orb was more mysterious, but she was learning to unlock its secrets. The crystal necklace was a constant companion, though she still didn't know its full purpose. Threx, for his part, seemed less like the distant, aloof aristocrat and more like a man who was genuinely invested in making this work. He was still the leader of Valoria, but he had begun to spend more time with Samantha, showing her parts of his world that no one else had seen. They would often meet in private chambers discussing plans for the future, but more often than not, their conversations were about things that mattered to them both as individuals. One evening, as they sat in a quiet room of the palace, Samantha noticed the subtle change in Threx's demeanor. He had removed his formal armor for the evening and was now dressed in a simple, flowing robe made of Valorian fabric, his long violet hair cascading down his back. He looked different, softer, more approachable, and for the first time, Samantha felt like they were equals, working side by side rather than master and servant. "I've been thinking," Threx said, his voice thoughtful. "You've made more progress in the last few weeks than I expected. Your understanding of our culture, our language, it's impressive, but more than that, I can see the change in you. You've embraced this world, despite the challenges." Samantha smiled faintly. "I had no choice. I had to find a way to fit in here, but truthfully, it's not just about fitting in anymore. It's about being a part of something bigger than myself. It's about us and the future we can create together." Threx nodded, his eyes steady on her. That's exactly what I've been trying to say. Together, we can build a future where both our peoples can thrive. We both have the strength to make it happen, if we're willing to work together. There was a pause as the words settled between them, and Samantha realized that this was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment when she could see a future not just for herself, but for both Earth and Valoria. She had come here thinking she was just another pawn in a political game, but now she could see that this was her chance to help both worlds, to bridge the gap between them. "I think we can do it," Samantha said softly, her voice filled with conviction. "We can make a difference, but we can't do it alone. We need the trust of both our peoples." Threx's gaze softened. "And that's why I need you, Samantha. You've shown me that there's more to life than just politics, more than just power and control. You've shown me that there is something truly valuable in human connection." The sincerity in his words made Samantha's heart flutter. She had never expected this. Never expected that her journey to Valoria would lead her to something more than just a political alliance. She hadn't expected to find a partner in Threx, someone who saw her as an equal, someone who valued what she brought to the table beyond just her role as his bride. "I've been thinking about that too," Samantha replied, her voice growing more confident. "We've learned so much from each other, but there's still so much we can do. Earth and Valoria, we're different, but we're not so different. We both want peace. We both want prosperity, and we both want a better future for our people." Threx stood up and walked over to the window, gazing out at the glowing skyline of Valoria's capital city. The two suns were setting, casting long shadows over the city, and the buildings reflected the golden light in beautiful patterns. "The future is uncertain, Samantha. There are forces in Valoria who do not agree with the path we are trying to walk. There are those who want to keep our world closed off from the rest of the galaxy. But with your help, I believe we can change that." Samantha joined him at the window, standing beside him in the silence. The city stretched out before them, its lights twinkling like stars on the ground. For the first time since she had arrived, Samantha felt like she was truly seeing Valoria, not as a strange foreign world, but as a place where she could make a difference. "We can change the future," she said quietly. "Together." Threx turned to her, his silver eyes reflecting the setting suns. There was something in his gaze, something deeper than before. For the first time, Samantha saw the man behind the leader. She saw the quiet strength in him, the vulnerability he had hidden for so long. She realized that they had both been carrying heavy burdens. But now, they could share them. Now, they could be partners. "We can," Threx agreed, his voice softer than usual. The silence between them felt like a promise that they could build a future together, not just as political figures, but as true partners, working side by side for the good of both their worlds. Over the next few days, Samantha and Threx worked tirelessly, making plans, meeting with advisors, and strategizing for the future. They spoke often about the importance of trust, of mutual understanding, and of forging a new path forward. As the alliance between Earth and Valoria took shape, Samantha could see the impact of their hard work. The people of Valoria were beginning to accept her not as an outsider, but as someone who could bring something valuable to the table. And the humans who had been part of the mail-order bride program were beginning to see that their role was more important than they had ever imagined. But, even as the future seemed brighter, there were still obstacles ahead. There were factions on Valoria who resisted the idea of cooperation with humans, and there were those who questioned Threx's leadership. But Samantha knew that, together, they could face whatever challenges came their way. They had already overcome so much, and the bond between them had only grown stronger. One night, as they sat together in the quiet of their chambers, Samantha looked at Threx, her heart full. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Threx smiled softly, the warmth in his eyes reflecting the peace that had settled over him. We have. And this is just the beginning. Samantha leaned back in her chair, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't known before. There were still many challenges to face, but for the first time, she felt ready. She felt like she had found her place, not just in Valoria, but in the world they were creating together. "We'll make it work," she said softly. Threx reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Together we will."